Welcome to Forum 360 on Fusion, your PBS channel. This is Leslie Ungar, your host today. Thank you for joining us on our global outlook with the local view. If you could save a life, would you? Could you? Although not a doctor, our guest today saves lives, and you can help. Evan Delahanty has accomplished much in his relatively short life. He started a business and was on ABC's Shark Tank. Evan volunteered with the Peace Corps, came back home to Northeast Ohio, and started a business that employs people in the Amazon rainforest. He started a company that does good. Let's hear firsthand how Evan went from Old Trail to the Shark Tank. Welcome to Forum 360, where there are no sharks.
Thank you.
Though
Leslie.
I would not mind being a sharkette.
There you go.
Okay. Faith Popcorn said years ago that companies that do good are good. Why is it important to you to do good?
I think there's a couple of reasons, and the first one is that it's just very simply it feels like the right thing to do. You know, with my background, you know, there were a couple steps between Old Trail and Shark Tank, as you might imagine. And one of those was I worked in private industry for 4 or 5 years in a very traditional business job, and I had a lot of fun. I had a lot of responsibility. I learned a whole lot of things, both about myself professionally, but also personally. And one of those was that if you're just working to make a buck, it doesn't always feel as fulfilling as you wish it would. And that's where when I went to Peace Corps, where obviously I didn't make any dollars, but it was incredibly fulfilling. But you need to bridge both of those things to have a sustainable place in the world, and that's where Peaceful Fruits comes in. So it's to add that little extra to make business, sustainable for your heart. But then the other side of it too is Peaceful Fruits really straddles that idealism, realism, chasm, if you will, where I want to do good because it feels good and it's the right thing to do. But especially in my market, in my type of product, it's also what people want. And that's where it's such a great fit for a healthy fruit snack like we do, where if you're in that healthy snack aisle, you're in mustard seed or you're in Krieger's, the odds are that you're more likely to care about social issues. You're more likely to care about saving the rainforest or local food or employing people with disabilities in Akron, which is also part of our social mission and part of our production model. And so that means that not only is it the right thing to do, but it also gives the customer a reason why should I buy the Kellogg's fruit snack and make 25 cents for a giant corporation, or should I help Evan save the rainforest and employ people with disabilities?
Well, speaking of that, doing good is partly about the message that you communicate to the outside
Absolutely.
world. So what have you learned about the message that your company communicates to the outside world, and how do you communicate that in the couple seconds or statistically, whatever it is that
Right.
someone is deciding between product A and product B? How do you communicate that message? As a communication coach, I'd love to know.
I'd love to know too, right? That's definitely, it's evolving, right? And we actually have here a couple examples of our packaging where, you can see the packaging started off, very simple. We're emphasizing the acai. We have a little bit of the rainforest.
So if you had to guess, statistically, what percentage of Americans can correctly pronounce
Acai, like 0, 2%, 1%. But what you see though, you're exactly right, where you can see our packaging evolving to be a little bit more vibrant, to emphasize the acai more because we think that's a distinguisher. And then as we go, you can see it evolving to be more rainforest oriented to really emphasize that mission. And we're actually have a new one coming out that even takes it a step further, where evolving that communication strategy is so important, because you're right, you get that 0.5 seconds as someone's walking down the row. But for us, we really try to emphasize, we want this to feel connected to the Amazon rainforest. That's our number one mission, and that's our number one message that we try to get to people.
Now, as an avid fan of Shark Tank, oftentimes I know they will comment on the packaging. So did any of the sharks comment pro or con on your packaging?
Not specifically. What we talked about with the sharks, especially Kevin O'Leary, who I actually had a very interesting conversation with at several points, as you might expect, I suppose.
No, I would say that that's a good sign on your, because oftentimes he's just saying, I'll squash you like a bug, and not really having a conversation. So if you had a conversation as a watcher of the Shark Tank, I would say that's a good thing.
Well, thank you.
That he was interested and thought you were worth talking to.
He was actually. I mean, honestly, if I could pick one of them to partner with, which obviously I don't know if I should spoil the ending of the show. It's been out, a little while
That's
now.
Right.
So I did not get a deal with any of them. But if I had, I would pick him as my partner.
Really?
Where we had a very good interaction, and he's that kind of guy. Kind of you alluded to this where he wants to push you to see how you handle it, and we all know that kind of person in our lives where they just want to see if you can take it and how you deal with it. And so we had a very aggressive debate for the first 10 minutes or so of the show, kind of on this topic of, you're a social enterprise, why? He thinks that business should be for profit and charities should be not for profit, and you shouldn't mix the two. And I think there is a reasonable, thoughtful argument for why that is, but we already talked about why I don't think that is for this type of product.
Do you think that any of that is generational? Do you think that some that comes from his generation of 60s, let's say? Do you think that your generation sees those merging more than former generations?
I do. I think that's part of it. And I think that's where you have to couch the argument in a way that's going to appeal to his generation, because often they're the gatekeepers in many different ways. But that's where, again, for a product like this, if I was making Harley Davidsons, for example, employing veterans, employing ex-cons, that that could make a lot of sense, because whatever whether it's true or not, the American perception of motorcycles has a link to that community, right or wrong. I'm not judging. For me, we're making healthy fruit snacks, having an environmentalism tie-in, having a tie-in to the Amazon rainforest, that makes sense. It's if I was saving the Amazon and making Harleys, yeah, that wouldn't make any sense. It wouldn't buy me anything. But when we're saving the Amazon as a rainforest fruit snack, that connects with customers. And that's the kind of argument that I had with Kevin O'Leary, to say, yeah, I'm not saying that social enterprise is always going to be the best way to do a business. There's some businesses where it's not a fit. But in my case, here are these dollar reasons where it is a fit. And then I do think, as an aside, it is often a fit. In almost any business, you just have to be a little bit creative.
You have to figure out how to make that connection.
Exactly, but if you do, it's valuable.
I'm anxious to go to the Shark Tank, but before I do, let me ask you one last question.
Sure.
Perhaps you can tell our listeners and our viewers, why does the Amazon need saving?
Well, sure. And the Amazon rainforest is a giant place, and I had the privilege to live there for 2 years as a United States Peace Corps volunteer. So I was in a little country called Suriname, which is there just next to Brazil, and literally just 10 seconds on Peace Corps. It's a government program where you're doing aid work, you're doing economic development, but you only go to places where you're invited, and you only work on projects that you're asked to help with, and you'll stay there in that community where you're working for 2 years. So you're really helping as a neighbor, not as some outside consultant. And so I was sent to the middle of the virgin Amazon rainforest, drive until the sidewalk ends, keep on driving, get to a river, jump in a canoe, go for a couple hours, and then you get to my village. And so in that place, what you see are two different types of challenges. One is about helping people improve their standard of living, and that's health and wellness, that's education, that's I did a lot of HIV/AIDS stuff. I did a lot of breastfeeding and nutrition related projects, and I also did a lot of infrastructure, solar energy, different things to help the people in that world improve their lives. But then the other side is to help people protect that life, and that's where to answer your question specifically, a lot of the opportunities for those people involve either destroying the environment, where, oh yeah, I can improve your standard of living real quick. I'm going to write you a check for $100,000. You can buy all the flat screens you want, but I'm going to clear cut your rainforest, or I'm going to strip mine it for gold. Or on the other hand, you have kind of the other side of, I'm going to get you a scholarship you can move to Amsterdam, or you can move to Seattle, and you're going to go to school. You're going to learn how to English and how to use a computer, and how to be a member of the developed world. but then you're also removed from your environment. And so, one way or the other, you end up with people not being in that environment, not being protected. And so, as a Peace Corps volunteer and and now as an entrepreneur, what I focus on is engaging with the people that want to stay in that environment and giving them ways to protect it. So in the Amazon, deforestation is the biggest challenge, where it's people coming in and clear cutting for timber, for gold, to grow soybeans is a huge impact on the jungle, or cattle grazing is something else that people might be familiar with. But so what we do instead is we offer the people not $100,000 up front once. We offer them $10 $10 an hour, or $10 a bushel for as many as they want of the acai berry, which grows wild and abundant on their land. And the Amazon's a big place. You can harvest a lot of acai without any sustainability issues. And this is literally, it's a weed tree down there. It grows everywhere. And so they're able to harvest that acai and make a renewable, sustainable income for as long as they want to make it, without having to move to Amsterdam or let Amsterdam come in, or whatever the case might be.
So if your magic wand worked, would you want to, mine doesn't work, so let me know if yours works better.
Some days.
But would you want to sell your company to a large company who could do what you're doing with a bigger footprint? Or would you want to keep it so that you could control that's what it would keep doing?
I think it's the first one. My goal is to build Peaceful Fruits into something that anyone could take over, and they'll have to keep doing it this way. And this kind of gets to what we were talking about with Kevin O'Leary, where I don't want to be saving the Amazon just out of the goodness of my heart. Evan wants to do that, but CEO of Peaceful Fruits, that's not why he does it. He does it because it's the right thing to do, and it also makes good business sense. And so for me, I think social enterprise has to make business sense to be sustainable, to get the Kevin O'Learys of the world to buy in, to grow it. And so for us, that's where I want to build that social mission branding into the core of the product so much that, we were talking about before, why should they buy me versus my competitor if it, costs about the same, tastes about the same, like maybe mine's a little bit better, but then they have a flavor, there's different flavors, it's you can't please everyone's taste buds, but to give them that extra reason is that social mission. And so if we make that part of the core of the product,
it will live on.
Right, then if Smucker's buys us, or if Nestle buys us, or General Mills buys us, they'll be able to see, like, oh, this is part of why Peaceful Fruits is outselling the classic fruit roll-up, is because of that mission. We have to invest in it. And even if they don't buy me, and instead they say, well, hey, we're going to do it ourselves, I still won, right?
Yes,
that's still a win.
Win-win.
So I'll be happy.
Today, we are talking with a local product, not the berry.
Acai.
Acai, not an acai berry, but a local product nonetheless. Evan Delahanty, who started his own business after the Peace Corps, Peaceful Fruits, was on Shark Tank, and we're going to hear about that right now. So, the real reason that I wanted you to be a guest on Farm 360 is, as a Shark Tank fan, let me ask you first, why did you want to go on Shark Tank? Was it the exposure? Was it the money? Was it the access to a shark? Mm-hmm. What was your reason for wanting to go on Shark Tank?
Well, I think that's actually a great segue from the thing we were just talking about, where my 10,000 foot goal for Peaceful Fruits is to show that social enterprise is the future of business. Where I think that if you're willing to spend that little extra time to plan and to think long term, social enterprise, it's the way forward. And I think I even said this on the Shark Tank episode. If folks watch it, if you don't take care of your community while you make money, then you run out of fun places to spend your money. It's that cold. And you can, obviously that's a very cold-blooded way to put it, but it's true. If you don't take care of the world, you're not going to have a good life in it. And so as I said, my high-level goal is to be there's a trend showing that, for increasingly young people like myself are starting businesses with a social mission. Mm-hmm. And I want to be part of showing that industry makes sense, is sustainable, is profitable, and should be the future of business. And so there's no better platform for that than Shark Tank.
Now, what was the process like to get on the show? Like both chronologically, from the first time you said, "Oh, gee, I think I want to be on Shark Tank," till you were actually, in the tank. How long did that take, and was it hard to get through that process?
So it's kind of funny. I mean, I don't own a TV. I've never.
I don't own a TV, but I want to be on Shark Tank. Right.
Well, I mean, it's funny because
let me just ask you, is it that much of a social phenomenon that you knew about Shark Tank without having a TV?
Well, I mean, I think so, especially this, modern age where there's lots of, the internet is out there. Like I've never watched, I don't think I've ever watched CNN News on a TV, not in an airport. But obviously, I'm aware of CNN. I've seen clips of the news, and same thing. I'd seen clips of Shark Tank, but I'd never watched a full episode until I got accepted, and then I had to sit down and do some homework. Right?
Did you have a favorite shark going in?
I did. Yeah, I was swinging for either Lori or Mark Cuban, or my two most likely I felt to get a deal. But for the process, I mean. It was about the exposure. It was about the possibility to really get the word out there in a lot of different ways. But it's so funny because maybe I don't know if this is good or bad what this says about me, but I've had people telling me I should go on Shark Tank since day one that I started Peaceful Fruits. You're in mustard seed, handing out snacks to demo the product, to help sell the product, and every grandma that walked by was like, "You should be on Shark Tank," and it's like, thank you. It'd be great if I met Oprah Winfrey hungry after a workout, right? Like that'd be great too. Or it'd be wonderful if I won Powerball, and you never really take it seriously. But last year we were actually named one of the top social enterprise startups in Ohio this past May, and with that accomplishment under our belt, which that was a couple-month-long program that we went through that ended in a pitch contest that we won $20,000 as part of that pitch contest. So having that traction under our belt, that's when I said, like, okay, well, I guess I'll apply, because here I have a 8-minute video of a pitch that I gave that says, that did well enough to win 20 grand. So now I have something a little bit more concrete where literally 100 people have told me I should go on Shark Tank. I should at least apply, right?
So what I'm dying to know, because as a communication coach, I will reference Shark Tank sometimes, and I always say that the hardest part of Shark Tank is the question and answer part, not the presentation. Because the presentation you can prepare for. You can't, even though you can try to have people ask you tough questions or whatever, you can't really prepare the same way for the question and answer. So was the question and answer the hardest part, and what surprised you most about that section?
I mean, this sounds terrible to say, but it actually wasn't that hard for me. And I wish that there was, I don't mean that in an arrogant way, and I wish there was a piece of advice that I could give people for why it wasn't hard for me, but it wasn't hard because this is what I eat, sleep, and breathe. If you ask me, Evan, like, walk me through it. How much did this cost? How did you decide to put that there? Like, why is it here instead of there? Why does it look like that? I have an answer.
So you knew your numbers.
I
because that's the number one thing people do wrong. But I would say not just about Shark Tank, but perhaps about their business, is that they don't know their numbers.
Right.
But for sure on Shark Tank, you have to know the numbers, right?
Yeah, and you have to know it, backwards and forwards and this way and that way, and that's where you can study for that. And I think if you don't know those things automatically, you have to. But fortunately, I'm lucky enough that because I'm the solo founder, like I've built this. This is my child, right? It's like saying, how do you know when your baby is crying? Are they sick? Are they hungry? Like because it's your baby, right? And you may not know in an instant, but you learn over time. And so that's where I have to admit they didn't ask me any questions that surprised me or caught me off guard.
Now, did they give you any rules to follow? Was there anything that you were supposed to do or not do, except for not telling how it ends up?
Right.
Did they give you any rules to follow?
There are a lot of rules, as you can imagine. Hollywood and big corporations, and that's why I'm being slightly cagey with some of my answers about the process. For example, where there's things you're not allowed to share.
Okay.
But I mean, mostly it's goes about like you would expect, right? Where there, it is quite a long process to get in front of the sharks. Is not one email and a phone call, as you might imagine.
Now, we see, I think, 12 minutes roughly, but tell us, how long are you actually there with the sharks?
So it depends very wildly. Some people will be there for 20 minutes and, Kevin O'Leary will crush them like a bug, right? And kick them out. And then I think the longest was over 2 hours. Someone was in front of them. That's pretty rare. But I was there for about an hour. And that's I maybe a little bit longer than normal because I think we had a good rapport.
Okay.
But yeah, you have about that 2-minute canned part, and then they just ask you questions for as long as they want you.
Is there a most valuable lesson that in anything that they said to you, or perhaps in any criticism that they had of you, or in any question, is there a most valuable lesson that you learned about your business that you could go home and work on?
Yes and no. I mean, and again, I don't mean this to sound arrogant, but fortunately, perhaps this shows that I did prepare and practice and study for this more than I ever had in my life, and I already knew these things backward and forwards because I built them. But so they didn't say anything that totally rocked my world. But it was more about for me was the validation, both personally, where as an entrepreneur, one of the biggest issues is just every day could be the day that you break out. It could also be the day that you fail. And so facing that existential gamble every single day is hard. And so to go on and have 5 famous business people say like, hey, this is a good product with a good story. You're a smart guy, like. That's necessary, right? That you need that sometimes. But then on the other hand, to specifically, like I know some of my challenges are around expanding the expertise that I have on my team, getting shelf space, getting attention on shelf space, and those are challenges that I'm working on right now. And you can see the progress that we're making just in the packaging here, and those were some of the things that they commented on, where we had a thoughtful discussion where I could say, you're 100% right, Robert. Like I don't have that figured out yet. Here's the steps I'm taking, but don't you want to help me figure it out?
In just the few minutes, it's gone by so fast. In the few minutes that we have remaining, I'm going to ask you for really 1 or 2 word answers,
right.
because
I'll
there's so much I want to. There's so much I want to cover. What makes a good owner a good owner?
Caring. Really have to care about every little thing. There's the buck stops. You got to be the guy that picks it up every time.
Why did you choose this business, or did it choose you?
I chose it because I thought it's not one word. It really fit what I wanted to do between social enterprise and having a chance to make money. It let me straddle that idealism, realism thing that I struggle with.
What is one thing that you wish you would have known about business before you started your own?
Everything takes twice as long as you think it should.
People think of food just being about food or just eating, but tell me why your food is not just a snack food.
I think Peaceful Fruits connects you to the Amazon. It connects you to the people that touched it and made it, and it's that made with love is what makes it extra. Where it's literally done right, from when it's first harvested from the tree to when it's packaged by hand into a bag, labeled by hand, and packed into a box by AJ with Down syndrome who lives 10 minutes from here. That extra little bit of love, that's what makes it different.
I'm a big proponent of Northeast Ohio, and I have to assume you came back here, so you're a proponent of Northeast Ohio. You were raised in Ohio and went as far as the Amazon and then chose to come back and start your business. What is one of your favorite things about the area?
I am so lucky to live in Peninsula, just outside,
just like the heart of the outside benefits.
And that's exactly what I would point to, is being able to be surrounded by the national park, by all this natural glory, but then to be a 20-minute drive from the Akron Art Museum or the business and industrial opportunities in Akron, and then be a 30-minute drive from the Cleveland Symphony, or some of these world-class Case Western Reserve, right? Cleveland Clinic. They're world-class things, and there are squirrels, and they're all 30 minutes apart. That's pretty cool,
Now you go to the Peace Corps and you end up in the Amazon.
Yep.
Where the boat stops.
Right.
Okay. And what is one thing, as prepared as you might have been, as one of my last questions, what is one thing that surprised you, either about yourself or about where you were living for those 2 years?
One of the most best lesson that I learned is that people are people. People are people, and you see the world through a different lens, so you shouldn't make assumptions. But at the end of the day, most people care about their families, try to do a good job, and want to take care of themselves and their future.
And then the native language that you learned
Yes.
is called,
Saramaccan.
can you say goodbye in that language?
So in Saramaccan, to say goodbye, you would say "Dumundue," which means goodbye. I will not see you for a long time.
For some people, their job is just that, a job. For others, it's a calling. We have learned today that for Evan, this business, his business, is a calling. Businesses that do good are good. Everyone in business, even businesses that do good, have challenges. A young entrepreneur trying to do good has different challenges. Evan was willing to stand in the Shark Tank and stand up to the sharks to help his business. What Evan is doing is kind of like random acts of kindness, but for profit. Remember Peaceful Fruits and the story behind the product. Perhaps you will ask yourself what you can do for your business, your career, or your figurative Amazon forest. I'm Leslie Ungar. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360 for a global outlook with a local view. And in one last question, your favorite thing about the Amazon rainforest?
It had to be the people. Just an incredible community.
And remember that the next time you see Peaceful Fruits. Thank you for joining us today on Forum 360.
Forum 360 is brought to you with support from Electric Impulse Communications, Kim and Harvey Nelson, Rubber City Radio Group, Acronist.com, Hudson Cable, Medical Mutual of Ohio, Forum 360 supporters, and the Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron.